Welcome everybody to Free Purview, your 1 hour special from the Official Wrestling Museum. We are your hosts. I am Angel, and I'm joined by the Official Wrestling Museum's Hall of Famer.
Whole life.
Now, so a little bit about the Free Purview, if this is the first time you're ever catching it. It's a 1 hour special that airs all month long, and then it does flow over to our network on our YouTube page for you guys to view as well too. And it's basically our community-based show or interviews with professional wrestlers. And today, I think it's actually going to tie both those into one great package. It really is. And let's give you a little feedback on this, because I've known this guy for at least a good 25 years. I've been wrestling 25 years.
Probably since like 98.
Yeah. And we go back obviously a very long ways. Yes, we're telling our age. And last year, when July 29th came about, and even before that and stuff, we were in contact and stuff, but we started to work a lot together. He came on board with the museum, and I thought, man, this show would be an awesome idea, but I didn't want to approach it to you because I wanted you to come naturally with it. And that was right off the bat. About 2-3 weeks after we started with you here, every time we come to the studio, we have a green room that we meet with the production crew on, and they say, oh, this is what you go over. Make sure you don't say this and that. Oh, we hear the same thing every week. And they came up to me and they were like, hey, do you think he'll be willing to tell this story? I said, I don't know. I said, he's kind of an open book. I said, but, let me guide it through. Let me see if he brings it up. A couple of weeks after that, you brought it up.
Yeah.
Then you kept bringing it up again and again. And I wanted to make sure it was something that you were ready for, you were comfortable for. And here's the best thing about this show here. It's a real show. This is This is something that I think a lot of you guys that's going to be watching, that's going to tell other family members or friends that, hey, look, this is going to air again because this is a month show that we air. We run it for 4 weeks on TV. Check this episode out. It comes back on next week at this time. You can relate to it. Or if it's at the end of the month, go to the officialwrestlingmuseum.com, go to their YouTube page, play this. You can relate to it. You may be in the exact situation, or you might be going through a situation that may not be exactly to the T, but you can relate to it. And I think in a world today that there's so much going on, I think just hearing somebody else's story can really actually bring more comfort to somebody than maybe, doing some other stuff. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you, my man, and I'm going to let you introduce what we're talking about today.
All right. So the idea was to talk about, like in August 2020, I had a big life-changing moment, and it definitely knocked my life sideways, backwards, upside down, blah, 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 blah. So I was engaged to Zsatara, and as you see there, and she ended up passing August 1st, 2020, 1 month before our original wedding date. We were gonna have to change it because of COVID, but we didn't want to, and so I don't even acknowledge that date really. It was a month before our wedding, so right there is
that's tough.
Shock number one.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
Yeah, so as we talk on here about people will say, she was your wife, and it's like, I know that only 1 month separated from that happening, and I definitely feel like it doesn't matter, she's my wife, but still for me, there's that in my head, the way I am, I'm like, it never happened. So I can call her my wife at times, but there's always a piece that I know I never got that moment.
That ceremony.
I wear my wedding ring almost every day. Sometimes I forget to put it on. I'm a guy.
Happens.
But
mine's just stuck on my finger. No matter how many times I try.
It was a month before our wedding, so I don't mind getting into detail about everything. Real quick, I don't want it to all be doom and gloom here, but so we met actually on a dating website my OK Cupid was what it was called, and I remember just seeing. I remember where I was when I saw her picture and her message to me, and I thought it was a guy, like trolling me, because the name was Zsatara Savard, and I'm like, that's a weird name, you know. And the picture, I'm like, I looked at a picture and I'm like, there's something about her that I like, but it seemed almost, I don't want to say exotic, 'cause she had a different look to her. And also in her pictures on the website, she had 2 kids with her.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, you know, I just got into some situations where I dated girls with kids. I don't want to do it again. So moving forward, I found out that no, she was just babysitting these kids. But that's awkward to have in your dating profile picture, you know?
True. But you know what, though? It maybe it was
siphons,
her way of
it siphons people out, you know?
Yeah, you know, if the person's not interested in having kids and she wanted to have kids, you know what I mean? That's not a bad idea.
And then real quick, we talked a little bit. We met up. I remember the first time I met her. We met at this mall in Concord, New Hampshire. Hung out for like 3 or 4 hours. Just an instant connection. And then, you know, I had in my mind a time frame of like, okay, you know, we started dating, and I remember in my mind having a time frame of when I would want her to move into my house with me, and I quickly broke that and had her move in long before my time frame. And then we ended up, she got pregnant. You know, I'm trying to streamline everything, but she got pregnant. We ended up having Nathanael, and you know, things were pretty good for the most part. You know, you have your moments, but things were pretty good for the most part. She was wanting to be. She was a hairdresser, but kind of wasn't at the moment. She had to get licensed in New Hampshire, so you know, I'm not taking any credit. I supported it. You know, I didn't have any passions for myself at the time. I had done the wrestling. I was done with it. To me, my passion was just to start a family, and I did that. And but she had a passion for the hairdressing, and I supported it. And
now, before like New Hampshire, did she already go through?
Yeah, she was licensed in Massachusetts.
See, with Missy, she went, and then our oldest, she was pregnant with our oldest, and she had to leave, and then the school just messed everything up.
Yeah.
So.
She was licensed in Mass.
All she had to do was just take the test, and
she was licensed in Mass, but then she had to go and get licensed in New Hampshire, and she had to do a certain amount of hours.
Yeah.
But I mean, she really didn't need to do that as far as like her skill level. And then she ended up getting a job at this boutique, or whatever you want to call it, a hairdressing place. It wasn't the right fit for her because the lady hired her thinking she was going to bring in all this clientele, but Zsatara didn't have clientele because we lived in New Hampshire. We didn't know anyone.
Right.
So, but Zsatara would do this lady's clients, and they would like the hair that Zsatara did better than the woman, and then the woman would come in, no, you're going to do it this way. This is how she likes it. But it wasn't. The women liked it the way Zsatara would do it. So Zsatara left there, and she got a job at Supercuts, which she wanted because she wanted the benefits, and she didn't have that clientele, so she wanted to go to Supercuts where she could just be banging out, you know, work for hours and banging out people and maybe build a clientele to get her own thing. And that's where she met Tyler and Brooke. I got to mention them because they were super close, and I still go see, well, not Tyler, I was seeing Tyler after she passed. I would drive up to New Hampshire.
Nice.
And then now I drive all the way up to New Hampshire to get my hair done by Brooke, and that's cool. Like family. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So that was.
Now, so how long were you guys together for all together?
So 5 years roughly. You know, before she passed. Yeah, and I mean we lived together for most of it. So you know, you say 5 years to some people that might not be long. We lived together the entire time, so pretty much,
especially in in today's day and age, you know, I mean, people aren't invested into relationships. A lot of people are afraid from what they heard or what's happened in the past. So 5 years, that's definitely a whole long time frame. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And like I said, most of it was good. You know, we had our moments, but
every relationship does.
But I also learned now. So she had epilepsy, and
So what is epilepsy, though?
Well, epilepsy, I guess the easiest way is I guess they would say a disease in your brain. There's different. So like some people will have seizures. Like when people think of seizures, a lot of people probably tend to think of like, oh, flashing lights will make them have a seizure. So, I mean, sometimes like, what's his name? Tua, whatever his name is, the Dolphins quarterback. Last year he got hit in the head and he had a seizure on the field. Now I don't know if he was epileptic, but sometimes a hit in the head can cause it. There's many different things. Zsatara's was triggered by reading, for the most part.
Really?
And so yeah, like if she was reading a lot, like on her phone, she would tend to get the seizures. I remember one she had, the first one I ever saw her have, and we were on the phone with Bob's Furniture because we were complaining about something, and she was on there reading all these warranties and stuff, and later that night, she just started having a seizure, and I just remember sitting there like looking at her, and she started having a seizure, and I was like, what are you doing? Because I thought the noises she was making, I thought she was trying to like scare Nathanael, and I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, she's having a seizure, okay. So she would only have a couple a year, like maybe 4 or 5 a year, if that. And some people have multiple ones a day. I mean,
now was it when she's reading from the phone, or was it like if she read, say, like a newspaper or something like that?
I think most of it was from the phone. I think.
So could it be like maybe the light?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know, but I mean, she probably had them reading books too. I mean, we didn't. That was one thing when she was studying for her tests and all that. She would be afraid because she wouldn't want to read too much. She did go at one point to Lebanon, New Hampshire, to get induced into seizures and stuff. They wanted to try to figure out what was causing them, blah, blah, blah. Ended up not having a seizure that week. But, you know, she was always wanting to figure out what was causing this. And, you know, fast forward, and when she did die, her brain was donated so that they could try to, I couldn't answer anything of if they found anything, but it was donated to
the science
for science.
So that's an everyday thing that's typical for everybody out there, just to read, or now just everybody lives on these things, is something that was kind of a nervous.
I think, you know, I honestly
for her because she never knew. Right. You know what I mean? So that's
and you know, I wasn't. I'm an honest person. I wasn't fully invested into epilepsy. She would try to get me to read things. Unfortunately, it didn't affect me at the time, really. Even though it did, but it didn't. I really didn't pay much attention. She would try to show me things. I do, you know, I don't have any regrets in life, but I do have things. I know it's a cheap way of saying I do have regrets. There's things I wish I did differently, but I don't regret things. And, you know, there were things she would want to show me, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get around to it. And, you know, it was kind of shady to not want. I wish I could have been more supportive. I mean, I was supportive, but I wish I could have been more invested for her sake, to show her how much behind her epilepsy.
So you're talking epilepsy, right?
Yeah.
And you didn't know that much about it. So in reality's sake, you went out with her for 5 years. She's been gone for a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking close to maybe like a decade.
Yeah.
Right? How much did you really hear epilepsy within this last decade?
Well,
you heard more recently,
right,
and maybe more personally for you, but as a community base, I've heard more about it over the last couple of years for organizing walks to, you know, just trying to get knowledge out there. So I would think, and I'm not trying to like just have your back with this, I would feel that it would be okay because you didn't know. I remember when my father passed, you know, we found out that he has stage 4 cancer, and it was like no time, and he had no symptoms at all. And then they're like, oh, chemo, and this is what you do. You give them this and this and this. Okay. And, you know, I try to look into stuff, but I was going by what was said.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't until afterwards I realized, well, I shouldn't have given them so much ice cream because the cancer will grow with the ice cream and, you know, different things.
Yeah,
but you don't get arrested until after the situation because you're just taking it as it comes.
Well, there were things like we would get into arguments sometimes, these stupid arguments, and then like maybe like 3 or 4 days later, she'd have a seizure, and I didn't learn about it till later on that I would have never known at the time, okay, she's gonna have a seizure in a couple days. But like now in hindsight, I can look back, even when she passed, like the previous 3 days to that, there was like arguments over like eggshells and sinks that I left or something. Like stupid, the dumbest arguments. And what it was her brain was
starting to
I guess, for lack of better terms, like her brain was preparing for the seizure. She wasn't fully herself. I wasn't arguing with Zsatara. I was arguing with the seizure she was about to have, and I would have never known then at the current time. Okay, she's gonna have a seizure. It just you just think like you're in a relationship. We're just having a stupid argument,
right?
And then, but in hindsight, I can look back at almost not every argument because we have arguments, but every time she would have a seizure, I could look back and go, oh, that's why we were arguing about this 3 days ago. And then she wouldn't know, and she would say, no, you're just making that up. But then again, she's not fully in her right mind, because she's going through this seizure.
Yeah. And she's not seeing the pattern.
Right.
And that's interesting because, they will say like sometimes there'll be signs for a heart attack, you know what I mean? And leading into it. I never even heard the patterns for seizures and stuff.
Now I don't know if that's for everyone, but it was for her.
That's pretty interesting. That you brought that up.
Another thing too would be like, she. Now this is for Zsatara. I don't know if this is for everyone when they have seizures, but after she would have a seizure, I learned that, you never put your fingers in their mouth, that they're biting their tongue. Unfortunately, they might even bite their tongue off, but you never put your finger in their mouth because they'll bite your finger right off because they're clamping down. And then also, it would take her generally like a half hour to 45 minutes after she had her seizure. Her seizures generally lasted like maybe a minute, 20 seconds long. And then, afterwards, it'd be like half hour, 40 minutes before she really started to come to and knew who she was, but she'd still be out of it. And
so how did that make you feel when that was all happening?
So
in that whole waiting process?
It was worrisome in the sense of, okay, I know she didn't have them often, so I wasn't worried all the time, but like I worked nights, so it was worrisome, like, okay, is she gonna have a seizure at nighttime holding the baby or anything? She never did, luckily. She did have some seizures at nighttime, but luckily it was never like holding a baby or anything. There were times where I lived an hour from where I worked an hour from where we lived. So there was like 1 or 2 times where I would get to work and she'd call me, maybe I'd be like 2-3 minutes from work and, oh, I just had a seizure. All right, let me turn around and come back because that's the most important thing. And, I remember one time a guy at work was like, oh, I think you're lying. I was like, I might as well just go to work and tell him as opposed to calling in. I drove the hour. I'm only 2 minutes away.
Right.
And then I would go in and go, I got to go back home. I have an emergency. And I remember one time the guy thought I was lying. It's like, well, why would I drive an hour to drive back home, So,
right.
And then, the thing I say about that is like, well, look, in the end, she passed from a seizure, so was I lying? So,
right. And the sad thing, though, is people will say, oh, yeah, this person's in the hospital, just to get out of things. And honestly, you end up, it's like that crying wolf.
Yeah.
I
never
to the
did
time
that,
you
but
really need it. So it hurts the people that are trying to be honest.
And the thing is, like, she probably shouldn't have been driving ever. She never had one driving. Different people had different fears. Like my dad always worried about her having a seizure driving. I never did because it just didn't work that way for her. Not to say that she could never have a seizure, but
right.
Like I know, like maybe her mother and me kind of worried about is she ever going to have one at nighttime alone with the baby? And she, like I said, she would have some seizures at nighttime, but it never affected like holding it while she was holding the Daniel or something. And so those were scary, but she kind of kept it quiet with a lot of people because she didn't want like supercuts to know that she was epileptic because she thought maybe they'd be like, well, you can't work here then because what if you have a seizure while you're cutting someone's hair, which wasn't going to happen. Like, again, that's not how it
So it
worked for
basically
her.
came that she was afraid that people would judge
Yeah.
her. Where it's really not
Yeah.
a judging situation.
Right.
So hold on. So is epilepsy because you have seizures, or is seizures there's something that grows into epilepsy?
So, to be honest with you, I don't know if every person that has a seizure is epileptic. That's why I was talking about Tua. I can't remember his last name. I think it's like Tupu. I just don't remember his last name, the quarterback on the Dolphins.
Yep.
I tried to research about it a little bit. Like, I don't know. I know he had gotten hit in the head. He had a seizure like two seasons ago. But I don't know if he's epileptic. So sometimes someone will tell me, like, oh, I have a seizure, and I'll ask them, are you epileptic? I don't know if just because you have a seizure, you're epileptic. You might have a seizure one time, and maybe it was because of you got hit in the head and it caused that seizure. So to be honest, I don't know. I mean, some people, like I said, some people will have several seizures a day. They're definitely epileptic, but I know of people that have said, like, oh, I had a seizure, and I don't know, someone told me, I was talking with someone the other day, might have even been you. Someone was telling me I'm pre-epileptic. Was that you I was talking?
Seizures.
Yeah, okay, I don't know what that means.
Yep.
Like, I'm pre-seizure-ish because I never have.
So
I don't know.
We have a project that we've been working on with the museum and stuff that we talk about, that we're gonna talk about in coming episodes. And one of the individuals told us that, and to us it kind of caught us off guard. And like I've done some research
I'm not saying
online,
it doesn't. Yeah.
but you don't know what site it's telling you the right stuff, because it's always something different. So
That's the thing, is like, I don't know, some people will like WebMD themselves and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's hard because it's like I can sit there and type in, okay, I got a rash on my neck. What is it? And then you type it in, and there's 15 things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, he could be telling what he's heard from someone.
True.
I have no idea. I have never heard of that. But then again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not the most knowledgeable person about seizures, but I never heard of it. But not to say that what he said wasn't a real term or anything, but to me, it's like pre-seizure-ish or whatever he said. It's like, so ain't I, because I've never had
it
seizure
before, right?
But the thing is, like, Zsatara, she didn't. After she passed, that's when I fully started getting invested in Epilepsy Foundation and stuff.
Let's get into the tough part.
Well, I just want to say, real quick,
Yeah, of course.
to finish that part off, so after she passed, I never was really invested in the Epilepsy Fund. We can get into that part again too, but the Epilepsy Foundation reached out to me. I started finding all this stuff out, and there was one term like warrior, epilepsy warrior, and like here, fight, and it's like I never was fully into that at first. I thought it was weird. Like, I didn't like the terms like warrior or fight, and then as I thought about it more, I'm like, well, you know what? These people who suffer of seizures and stuff, they fight every day to live a normal life. They are warriors. And it started to become more of a terms that I really started to love. And it's like, people say you got to fight epilepsy, and it's, to me, it's, unfortunately, I don't think it's something that's ever going to be cured, just like cancer. I don't know, but it's like, so to me, it's a different, it's not just, you're not just saying fight cancer, fight for a cure, but it's like fight to keep yourself, your existence, who you are, fight for that. Even if you have epilepsy, don't let that say like, okay, now I can't do this because I have epilepsy. And I remember doing the epilepsy cruise we did in Boston one time, which I was welcomed into the epilepsy community, if you want to call it that, like wholeheartedly. And I don't even have epilepsy. My son doesn't have it, but Zsatara did. And I remember talking to one kid there. He was like 17 or so. And he was talking about like, yeah, I still do this. I still go to do this and this and this. And I was just like, man, that you're a warrior, man. You're a warrior. You do all these things. You don't let epilepsy stop you. And, I think that's something that they should hear, because I don't have to fight something like this every single day. I don't have the fear of,
That's crazy. And I will say this too, as the epilepsy, we did the epilepsy walk in Boston. We were there to support you, support your wife, support the charity. And both of us have done tons of charity work with wrestling throughout our 25-year career. And I always go into these events, if it's there for marketing purpose, like promotion purposes, supporting, of whatever it is, with the open mind to see how it is. This organization is really for making people feel good, feeling welcome. It's a whole different vibe, you know what I mean? And it was so like relieving to know that it was more about caring than them trying to make that donation money, they really are there to help. And it's not just the person itself, the family itself. So it's really a real great charity organization. It really is.
Yeah, I introduced you to like the CEO, and I was like, "This is the CEO," and it's not even like, "This is the CEO." I like hugs and like,
and they take the time.
Yeah, and some people
they want to be around you.
Some people I might have met one time and 3-4 years ago, and I'll show up at an event or something, and they're like, "Oh, Geoff," and honestly, I do feel like for me, like it's another family, and and like you said, as far as like the raising money and stuff, I don't ever with them. The very first time they messaged me, I was like, oh, yeah, they're just reaching out because now they want to get involved and stuff. But like as soon as I read the first email I ever got, and then they called me, it didn't like they were like telling me, we want to give you some money for this or that. I never like to say how much because everyone could be different. But they were offering me stuff, and I'm like, of course, at the time I'm like, oh no. And they're like, no, and so it never felt like they were trying to take or use me to take advantage of situations, because like, who am I? It just was immediately like, these people are here to help me, support me. And so yeah, the Epilepsy Foundation of New England has always been, since she died. I didn't even know what it was before she died. I mean, I might have heard of it, but...
And that's the thing, too. A lot of people don't know of what the stuff is until it impacts their life. Yeah. And that's okay, because that's, unfortunately, the way life goes. Everybody gets busy. Everybody gets, drawn into what you're into. But it's okay to be okay with the fact that you didn't know prior to it.
Yeah. And a lot of charities, like, you would donate to them, and you're like, okay, I'm donating $45 to such and such. Where's it going? Who's it going to? Is it going to a cure? A lot of places might say it's going to the cure. So, like I just said, they donated some money. They gave me some money. Again, I keep it quiet because everyone gets different amounts, whatever. So I can speak firsthand. Like, money went to me, and so no, it's not all going towards a cure or something like that, but it's not going to someone at a desk to pay their salary either. It's going to, it's going to places it needs to go to. So I've always supported Epilepsy Foundation for that reason. And I'm not saying other charities aren't like that. Right. I just don't know,
And we do have something special planned for the one coming up here in Rhode Island. From what we know, it's supposed to be the last weekend of October. Once they lock it into place, at least at the time of this taping right now, it's not locked 100% in stone. So once it gets locked in, we will announce what we plan on doing to help out. And
it's funny,
it'll be cool.
When you talked about when we did the epilepsy walk in Boston. So there's thousands of people there, people with epilepsy, people supporting people with epilepsy, but there's also people like me who are there for people who pass from epilepsy, which is called Sudep, by the way. Sudden and unexpected death in epilepsy. But I don't know how you felt, but like we walk in and I'm like, oh, here's the remembrance wall, and it was just this wall with four sides.
It was overwhelming in such a great,
I'm sitting
passionate
there,
way.
And I'm like introducing you to people that are they're not there, they're dead, they're gone, they're not there, but their pictures are there, and I'm like, oh, this is so and so, and this is so and so, and there are even people that I don't know, but I know of through other people I've met, and I'm like, this is so and so, and this is so and so, and that it's just when you think about it in a way, it's like here I am, like introducing you. Of all these people, there's people that you see. Like there were people that we ran into that but at the same time, it's like here's my group of friends, but they're not.
But that was so powerful for me. And honestly, it was so powerful for me because it was, first off, it's honestly just a wooden wall painted white. There's really nothing spectacular besides the images.
Yeah.
And I love that because it was bringing you to those images and to hear stories and to see family members or friends go up to these pictures just to see. And, you know, there was a time where your son at the end was just
that's
totally amazing to me. It just brought so much of what that day was truly about. And it was, you know, sometimes in life you just need to stop, take a breather, remember, and just have your moments. Not worry about what the world around you is and just feel.
Or even when I can't remember names too well, but when the other couple came in and saw me and they were like, hey, we know you. And it was people that I had met through the Remembrance Network. And, you know, that was pretty cool.
You were honestly a celebrity there. And you weren't low life there.
No.
You know what I mean? It was so weird to see that celebrity.
I mean, I've done a lot of, like, since Zsatara passed, I've done a lot of, like, you know, the first gala they did after she passed. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they couldn't do it in front of a crowd. It was done, like, over YouTube and stuff. And I did do a speech there. I've done a couple podcasts and things for them. Like, there was one podcast I did that was supposed to be about 20 minutes, and I went 2 hours. So
that's no surprise what you're
right. But yeah, it's just you know, I feel like though with Zsatara, I would always want to get her story out there, and the Epilepsy Foundation, I was like, this is the crowd to do it with. So I wanted to take advantage of that. So
good. Well, let's get to that hard part. Now she passes.
Yeah.
Take us through. Even you said a couple of days before you guys had an argument about eggshells.
That stuff doesn't matter because it's just like whatever.
Right,
it's just everyday stuff.
The pattern that you've seen that if anybody's tuning in, you would noticing, and it doesn't happen. It might not happen with everybody that has seizures or epilepsy, but it will be a couple of days before you guys will have a little argument over something that wasn't anything important at all, and then you found a couple of days later there would be a seizure.
Yeah, well, so
that was a pattern that you were seeing. So there could be patterns, you know.
Well, I mean, like I said, we had a couple dumb arguments. It didn't matter because that's just life.
Right, but it was a pattern. And now
we were supposed
comes to that night.
Well, me and Nathanael were supposed to go to my mother's house in Boston. My parents' house, sorry. I always say mother's, but my mother and father. Yep. And I was like, I got home from work, and I was like, you know, I just don't really want to go today because I was going to have to go. I worked in Boston, but lived in New Hampshire. So I was like, you know what? I just don't want to drive back to Boston today. So I was like, I don't really want to go. And Zsatara had to work that day. And she was like, oh, take Nathanael. He'll have so much fun because he was going to play with my niece that day. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll go. So she went to work, and I went and took a bath. You know, I like to take baths. So I remember.
Got his rubber duckies.
So yeah, I'm in the tub, and she called up, and she's like, "Hey, you know, you're still gonna, you know." She just was like, "Okay, I'll miss you. You're gonna go, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna go. Probably go in about an hour or so." And then she was like, "All right, I love you," and I said, "I love you too." Unbeknownst to me, that was the last time we would ever speak. So the last words were, "I love you too." And then me and Nathanael went to my parents, and then. That night it was weird because she never called to say goodnight. And I'm like, okay, maybe she just went to sleep when she got home. And then the next morning, I remember going, I should have called last night because she's probably going to be mad that I didn't call her. And then the next morning, she never called either. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to just let it go. But I know I should call because she's going to be mad. And then her friend Brooke called from work, and she was like, hey, is Zsatara there? Because she's not at work. And I was just like, I'm in Boston. I was like, let me call and see if what's up. So I called her cell phone, and it went right to voicemail. And I was like, oh, okay. Her battery died overnight, probably, and the alarm never went off. So again, I'm an hour away, and so my dad's like, you should go up there. And I'm like, no, you know what's going to happen is I'm going to get 20 minutes down the road, and she's going to wake up and call, and I'm going to have to come back, and I'm going to be all aggravated.
Yeah, it's a normal thing to think.
So after maybe about 20, 30, 40 minutes or so, I did end up calling the neighbor across the street just to say, hey, is her car out there? And they said, yeah. And then they said, do you want us to go check? And I was like, no, that's okay. So in a way, it was kind of a blessing that they didn't, because then I did end up, I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? And I thought of it as a joke. I was like, I'm gonna call the police to do a wellness check, because in my head I'm thinking, they're gonna get there, they're gonna go in, they're gonna wake her up, and I'm always gonna have that joke with her.
Yeah.
And so I did call the police to do a wellness check. They went in, they were like, well, the doors are locked. And we always kept this back slider unlocked. It doesn't matter, I can say it because I don't live there. No one's gonna,
Right, that's true.
No one's gonna break in. So I was like, no, the back slider is unlocked. You can go in that way. And I'm still thinking they're gonna go in and scare her because they're gonna wake her up. And then they called back in like 20 minutes, and that wasn't the call I was getting. They actually called and they said that, oh yeah, she was here and she was passed away in the bathroom. So, you're not prepared to hear that. And then so that's the moment that changed my life. And
So where were you when that happened?
I was in my parents' kitchen,
Yeah.
and that happened. And where I was going to say, like, this changed my life. Not only just that obviously changed it, but this is the problem that I'm having now, is because from that very first moment, I remember looking outside at my son and like, oh, how am I gonna tell him? And then thinking about her mother, how am I gonna tell her? I immediately went to thinking about other people as opposed to myself. And, that's a problem. Here we are almost 4 years down the line, as we've talked about a lot lately, that I have a problem with my own stuff because I've always pushed myself away and worried about other people. Like, so that day, I made a couple phone calls. My cousin, my striker, who's my uncle, if we didn't say earlier, we're breaking kayfabe here, but more like brothers. I mean, me and him are almost the same age. George was super close. Those were my first calls. I think actually her mother was the first call, and then Brooke was probably the second call because I had to let her know. And I remember their reactions, and then calling George, my cousin George, and I remember, because we don't usually call, we text.
Yeah.
And so when I called him, he's like, well, this is weird. You're calling, and him making a joke, and I was bawling. And then calling Maddie. Maddie was actually at drill that weekend.
wow.
He left right away, and then a lot of my family just came
Not
to the
surprised
house.
about Maddie.
Yeah, a lot of my family came that day, and I never had to go to the house to identify her body or anything or deal with any of that stuff, which was, I guess, a blessing. I remember drinking a little bit that day because you're just in shock.
Right.
I can fast forward and say I'm not an alcoholic or anything. I've never, and I'm not saying this is wrong for people. Everyone's going to handle this stuff. The only times I really ever drank to excess were I've been to 2 weddings since, and that was partly to have fun, but also I think honestly to get through the emotions. But just dealing with that day, and I stayed home at my parents for the next 2 days or so, and then going when we went home, it's like, okay, I'm going home. What am I gonna do? I had no idea how I was gonna handle it with my son, who was 4 at the time.
No, okay, so let's pause a second. Now, you said you had to tell your son. And
I didn't tell him then.
You immediately turned to, I gotta protect my kid.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I have to talk to the parents. Oh, I gotta let their work know. I gotta do all this stuff.
No.
So a typical reaction of what you have to come out with, right? So now you're processing all this. Now, you said you didn't tell your son right away, right?
Yeah, because he was only 4
and
and
that
a half.
makes sense. You know what I
We
mean?
didn't tell him for a few days.
Okay.
I just told him Mommy's not here. When we went home, her car was there. I actually recorded I actually recorded on my phone when we got home. I don't know why. I've never watched it back. I don't need to because I remember it in my head, just him crying. And of course, him crying because Mommy's not there is multiplied times 10,000 because I know she's never going to be there and he doesn't. So it's even worse for me. he doesn't know because he's just getting home and mommy's not there. He doesn't understand. So,
Maybe that was her way of saying it's okay.
So, yeah, I mean, how do you, you can't prepare for stuff like this because she wasn't sick. Yes, she did have epilepsy, so you can say she was sick. But, I never knew, and she didn't know, that you could just die from a seizure. She died from the seizure. It wasn't like she hit her head. She just died from having the seizure. I never knew that. That's not a common thing. It's a rare thing, but it's
something that.
No, I was gonna say, like, what I was trying to say was, like, with people that do know, it's like, okay, common isn't the right word. It's kind of like one of the big ordeals now. It's like, okay, should people with epilepsy know about Sudep? Because it can happen, but it's very rare. So it's almost like, well, do you want to tell someone who's worrying every day just about having seizures, trying to maybe have a seizure-free day, that, hey, one of these seizures could just kill you? You can't there's no warning signs. There's no special trigger. It just happens. So honestly, like, if it was me, I wouldn't want to know about it. But who's to say you're right or wrong if you're a doctor if you don't tell them? It's a tough. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to get. It's a whole ethical thing. So, I don't want to get into that. But we didn't know that
you didn't know.
Yeah.
Now you said she passed away in the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
So now here you are, going into your house. Your son's with you. Okay. The car's outside. You have to take that emotion in for yourself, but somewhere inside you, you have to lock it up a little bit because you have your 4-year-old son. Now you go inside.
Yeah.
How do you get yourself through that door? How do you get yourself to go to that? Did you have more than one bathroom in the house?
No.
So
that's the thing.
So
it's
you were faced that you had to go.
Unless I want to go in the woods.
Did you know, like, exactly where in the bathroom, or was it just the bathroom? You don't have to go into details, you know what I mean, with that. But, like, did you know, like, if it was at the sink or,
I know where they had told me, if I remember correctly, they had told me she was kind of in between the toilet and the sink.
Okay.
So,
so now, here you are, you have to get yourself through that trestle of the door. Now you have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
How are you processing that for yourself?
I don't know, to be honest. I just went in there. I think obviously the first place I went was to go in the bathroom to just look. It's not like, when someone dies on the highway and you can see a cross there and fly. I mean, I did put, like, some decals on the wall, which when I sold my house, the people that bought it left that stuff there, which was pretty nice.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't know. I can't remember those first few nights at the house. I know it was, I can't, you know what, man, I can't even remember them. I can remember that immediately. It was like, one of my first thoughts was when Nathaniel's not going to the wake or the funeral. Those were one of my first thoughts because I didn't want him to see her like that. I didn't think that it would be beneficial. He wouldn't understand. He would probably think she's playing.
He's 4 years old too.
Yeah.
And a lot of people make that assumption at that age, for a child at that age, if it's a good thing or not.
Yeah, and then, I went to planning out the funeral after that, so I was immediately distracted with that. And then, like, it was like, okay, the funeral's gotta be perfect, the perfect send-off. Like, so me, her mother, brother, stepdad, and uncle. You said
the perfect send-off.
Yeah.
Why those words?
Well, I mean, obviously she's gone, so
yeah.
I wanted to incorporate things from our wedding into it, and I wanted it to not be sad. I wanted it to be happy. Like, I didn't cry at all through the funeral or the wake. I tried to make it a happy. I wanted it to be like, if I was going to go out and be putting a funeral and stuff, I wanted it to be the way I would have wanted it to be for me. So I told, it was nothing but funny stories. And
so it sounded like you kind of accepted this.
At the beginning,
using that terminology.
No, at the beginning,
you accepted and you knew this was what life was going to get because it's reality.
I think at the beginning, that's how I chose to deal with it. It's like, I have no choice. This is what happened. and this is what I got to deal with. You know, it's now 4 years, almost 4 years later, that, you know, through all this time, I've been like super, not like making this stuff up, like I'm great, but I would tell everyone like, oh, I'm doing fine, everything's great. And it was, but it wasn't. And now 3, 4 years down the line, now I'm backtracking. I'm having a lot of issues with, like, I never grieved for me. And so I'm learning how to do that because I don't know how to do that. It's never been about me. And so, like, with the funeral, immediately it was, everything's got to be for her. This is her day, this is her way, she's going, you know. But there were parts of me in it, like I played our wedding song, and I danced with all the maids of honor and stuff, and played another song, and all the groomsmen, we not danced, but we kind of huddled, and she was in her wedding shoes, and we had the centerpieces from the wedding. I did the mother-son dance with my mother and her mother at the casket, and did like my version of what the vows would be, because I had to change them because she was dead. But you know, even like to the point, you know, she went down with her engagement ring on because she wanted it so bad. I'm like, you know, some people were like, you should save it maybe for Nathanael. No, you know, this was hers. She wanted it so much, and so I want her to have it. And you know, even when she was lowered into the ground, we had she sang. We had a song that she sung, and she sang herself being lowered. I mean, this was I had people come up to me, and this isn't just trying to brag about about it, because but I had people come up to me and say, you know, I've never been to a funeral like this. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, just you know, they always say you want to celebrate someone's life, but it's so hard because you're saying goodbye to them. And I had people really say to me, I've never been to a funeral where it truly was like a celebration of someone's life. You know, we had the Hells Angels there. I always like to bring that up because her grandfather's a big member of the Hells Angels, and people were like, why are the Hells Angels here? And I'd just be like, that's how we roll. But, you know, to have an escort by the Hells Angels was pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, it was, you know, I talk about her funeral with smiles because it was such a special day. But, you know, it's also, we didn't have our wedding. That is the closest to me for our wedding. Like, sometimes I even mess up and call it the wedding. And that's just how I chose to handle it. I talked for about 12 minutes, gave a speech, and nothing sad, just all fun stuff. And
you know, as you were saying that, you were kind of smiling a little bit.
I feel like, because that's how I've made that funeral. It's not just me trying to revisionist history of me thinking what a happy, it truly was like, you know, she never thought like people would come see her like that. Like, there was so many people there. I was even like, wow, I didn't know how many people would have came, but there was so many people there. The people so generous with, you know, money and stuff like that. I would, you know, not that matters, but just the generosity and just the people. It truly was an amazing two days. COVID changed a lot of things. We had it streamed over the internet because of COVID, and people were like, our grandfathers in California, and I had family that couldn't make it due to health reasons and stuff. So it's still on there that Nathanael will be able to see it one day. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I don't know when, you know, that'll come down the line.
When you feel the time is right, but it sounds to me that you were able to adjust for your son's sake. No. You were also able to adjust for your sake, for who you are as a person, and you were grieving the way you are as a person. And
at that time, wrong. Yeah, I think
what's your not that it's a problem. I think what's happened now, that you're maybe 4 years later, and you're starting to feel all this, you're getting that time is so far away, and you might feel like you're drifting away from her.
I think that's part of it. I think the shock of her I think the shock is wearing off, and, you know, because again, it's not like, you know, I mean, people will say, what would you rather? Someone that you know has cancer that is like, okay, they got 6 months to live, or would you rather it be they just die like Zsatara did? Number one, it's like neither. Yeah, I'd rather
Exactly.
neither, but I couldn't. You can't answer that. Like,
can't.
what I want to know. Okay, you got 6 months left to live, buddy, or I'm gonna leave and never see you again. Not know. You can't answer that. So either way, I think there's gonna be differences in the way you feel. I think because with the cancer, maybe like you would have been able to prepare for it. I'm not saying one's better than the other.
To be honest, they gave my father 12 months.
Yeah, and it was
And
much
he went
shorter.
3 months.
Yeah, I remember with my
know,
grandfather, they
it's-
said a year, and he died in a
Yep.
week. So
Yeah, you really don't know when something's going
Right.
to come. You know what's interesting though? You said your very last conversation was, "Are you going to go?
to my
I
parents.
miss you. I love you."
Our very last words, and this isn't a lie.
Well, listen
Our
to
very
the-
last words to each other were, "I love you too."
But
That
listen
was,
to the last three things. Are you going to go?
yeah.
I miss you. I love you. If you hold on to those three sentences, and I know people believe different things. Some people believe in science, people don't. I believe there's always science. She's telling you that it's okay to go. She's always going to miss you, and she's always going to
Well,
love you.
I wish not, because it's been very hard. I'm not gonna
But-
lie, man. It's been
and it's not even
extremely
saying
hard
for you
without
to
her.
find somebody else to move on with, but just to be okay with your life. I'm going to tell you something, and I really thought about playing this video here, but I said, this is something that's personal, and I didn't want it to be, and I know you wouldn't care, but I wanted that to still be something between you, the people that were there. I remember it was your birthday party, and she was walking out with cake. Okay.
Oh, man.
And she falls, and
was-
the cake goes down.
That was 2 weeks before she.
Yep.
The thing is crazy is that was 2 weeks before she died. Yeah, she came out with the birthday cake,
Yep.
and in my family, especially it's with Stryker mainly.
Yep.
He's the one that will smash a cake in someone's face. So he had been trying to get her to smash it in my face, and actually that was during COVID time. So that party, it was really a surprise party, I guess, in the sense of
Yep.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, I did figure it out, but I never let her know because she tried so hard, and she did come out with the birthday cake, and we were just talking about the party the last year that Maddie smacked the cake into one of my cousin's faces, and we were talking about it, and as I'm talking about it, she steps in a gopher hole that's like down to her knee, drops the cake all over me.
Yep.
And the first thing I say is, "How much did you pay for that cake?" Not like, "Are you okay?" I was worried about the money.
Oh.
There she is right there again.
There she is again.
I was worried about the money she paid for the cake. And the thing is, like, that was 2 weeks before she passed, and it's like, what better memory to have than that,
I remember watching that video, and at this time too, like we lost contact after
Yeah.
wrestling, because back then there was AOL, there was MySpaces, and honestly, I didn't learn his real name until around July 29th. When I found his name online, I think you might have found me or whoever found each other.
Yeah.
And then Sergeant Stryker, no lie, the personalities that both you guys have, I thought those names were just works. Like literally, I could see your last name just being a name you come up with. I could see Sergeant Stryker's name. I can see that. So I never thought that was your real names. Come to find out it is. So when we weren't as close as this past year has made us, and there's definitely a bond between the three of us that I'm so grateful for, because there's a true saying, you're lucky in your lifetime if you can count your true friends in your hands. And you and Maddie, I count as family. Sorry, Stryker. Yeah, but I honestly count as brothers, and it's not a lie. And I hold that true to my heart.
Well, you were one of the people that reached out. I mean, a lot of people reached out to me, obviously.
That's not important.
Dave, Livewire Dave Padula reached out quite
He's
often.
a great guy, he is.
Yeah, but you did quite often. I remember when I would talk with Stryker, and I'd be like, and I remember saying to him, like, who's been reaching out to me a lot is Angel. I'll say Angel. Like, I'm like, he's been messaging me a lot, and I didn't think it was weird, but I'm like, of all the people, like, this is
we
the
had a
person who
special
was the
bond
most
way
constant.
back in the back. When we first started, like we really did. but I know we're running short on this time.
Yeah.
With that, I remember seeing that.
Go
and
for another hour? I mean, there's so much more
well,
to
I think we might end up doing a part 2 with this
There's a lot
down
more,
the line.
like,
or maybe we'll make it a special on our YouTube page, too. You know, we'll see. Anyway, that story with the cake, I remember her falling. I remember the look on your face. I remember the look on her face. And all I said to myself was, man, these two people truly love each other.
She was devastated when she dropped that cake.
But she wasn't mad that the cake fell. You could see the look in her eyes like, oh my God, I just messed up the person that I love's cake.
Well, she also was worried that she would think that I thought she did it on purpose, too.
Well, right, but it just that look, and I'm like, those two have something very special with each other.
Yeah.
And,
again, we had our moments, but I mean,
I think it's perfectly okay for how you're feeling today, man.
Even in our moments, like I mean, there was a couple arguments that were really bad. You know, as everyone has, maybe you have an argument that you separate for like a day or two, whatever, without getting into detail. But I knew even in our worst argument ever, that was the person that I was gonna spend the rest of my life with. I know we're running out of time.
Yeah,
I think we have to do a part 2.
Yeah,
so.
I think we're gonna have to. No lie, like I don't really talk about my father at all, ever. My wife, Missy, she obviously knows, she was there with me. But besides her, literally, I've opened up to you and Saj, because we're in a group chat, more about my father than anybody else.
Yeah.
And I think it's just there's certain times, and my father, my son's going to be 10 in August, and it's going to be 10 years for my father. I think there's just certain times in our life that we feel the times to grieve or talk or do things differently. So I think what you're going through today, 4 years later, is perfectly normal. I think if you need to vent or get it out, it's okay to do. I honestly thank you for opening up and sharing your story, and hopefully, even if it's not epilepsy, even if it's not somebody with seizures, but some other medical condition or something that's just bothering you, or know something, that the story you can kind of relate to it, and maybe it brings some comfort to you.
I'll say, like, in closing, at least if this is only the first part, if you have someone who has like epilepsy or some sort of illness or something, again, I think put some effort into caring about it. I think it would do a lot for that person. That's one thing, like I said, I don't like to use the word regret, but I wish that before Zsatara had passed, we had been more into these epilepsy walks and stuff. I can't ever have that, but I can have them now, but how much maybe support or love would she have felt had I shown some more care, you know?
And I know we got to wrap this up. I do want to toss out, there's somebody very special out there that does the boom, boom, boom from New Day, that does something very special for you with that.
We'll talk about that in the second part.
We will, but I wanted to mention that today. Respects to that. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will let you know when we're going to do part 2. Enjoy. We hope you pass this around, and we'll see you next time here on Free Preview.
Thank you.